Hi, I'm Celeste Loots, and you're watching The Permanent Brain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I'm happy to be joined by Celeste Lewis. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Chloe?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so excited to talk with you about One Piece and your wonderful portrayal of Kaya. But before we jump into the show, what can you share about your background in the arts and when you knew you had a love for performing?
Um, I mean, it started when I was very young. I took drama classes, as you do when you're a little 5, 6 year old, and I always really enjoyed it and found so much happiness and confidence in it. And then, I mean, throughout school, I also would always take part in like drama projects and plays and stuff like that. But I didn't really think that I was going to pursue it as a career for the majority of my life. And then when I got to university, I thought I was going to go into law. And then I got to university and I think I just had a bit of a light bulb moment of like, I think I've been denying that I've been wanting to do this for a very long time, and I think it's calling my name. So yeah.
So you went to university, you ended up graduating from University of Cape Town in theater and performance. Tell me about your studies and like what kinds of transferable lessons did you take away from your academics? Like what did you really fall in love with in university?
I think the biggest thing that I took away that I didn't expect I was going to take away from it, because you kind of go into drama school expecting to learn, acting techniques and learn about the, history and the different people who have influenced acting and things. But I was quite surprised that in my second year of studies, the whole year kind of focused on the self. And I didn't expect that I was going to need to get that comfortable in my own body and in my own emotions in order to take on, a character's body and a character's emotions and to be able to portray it in, the most honest way that I can. So I think all in all, that's been the thing that I've been carrying with me. Of course, there's been so many techniques, and especially for stage with like how to use your voice and those things that I wouldn't be able to learn any other way. But yeah, that was definitely the most surprising lesson that I learned.
It's such an interesting thing to kind of just be more in tune with yourself and like you mentioned, understand yourself and your body and
Yeah.
something really cool for you and speaks volumes about how good you are at it is you only started building your film resume within the past 4 years. So what kind of inspired you to start auditioning for projects and then wanting to be on screen coming from more of the theater and stage background?
Yeah, I also, it wasn't something that I planned. My love lied very much in theater when I started studying, or even prior to that. Even though I've always loved films, but I never saw myself as an on-screen actor, or that was the direction I was gonna, focus on going into. But then I finished my studies like in 2020, and we all know what year that was in terms of what the world was going through. So theater wasn't really happening. So naturally, I started auditioning for, film and for TV. And it again surprised me in a really interesting way, where the first, it was like a TV movie that I booked. And what I actually found so much joy that happens with on-screen acting is that you have this character that you build, and instead of you playing this character in real time and going through a very specific journey for that hour and a half, however long a play is, what happens is you start building a puzzle with your character, because scenes are often shot so out of order, and you kind of get this opportunity to like plan where you want to land things, and then slowly you start putting all these pieces together. And I think that's been something that I've found so much joy in doing, in the process of shooting something and being able to, you know, puzzle a character together. Yeah, it's been an incredible learning experience.
That's so amazing. And yeah, I was going to mention, I read in an interview that you did about how you really like to figure out the behind the scenes that viewers aren't privy to seeing. So it's a really important part for you and your process to go through that. And
Yeah.
on Instagram, I saw something very cool, and that is you were a Stardust Theatrical Dining performer in the past, which it honestly seems like such a fun gig. Like, so you were a server as well as a performer. It's like two jobs in one, kind of.
It was very fun. It was intense and so busy, but absolutely just a hoot. It was so enjoyable and singing songs and interacting with the audience. And yeah, it was it was great fun.
It sounds like a really hard job to do, though, because there's not only the service aspect, but it's like wanting to perform and wanting to entertain.
Yes, I think it's something that surprised me because I was singing was relatively comfortable, but you still get a little bit nervous. And I, especially in front of a mic, was like, when I started, I was quite nervous to sing sometimes, or like new songs or something like that. But then because I was constantly on my feet and I was like, here's your Coca-Cola, sir. And then you look at the stage, you're like, the lights are going down. I'm supposed to be standing there and start my song now. And you're like, rush down to get there. So you kind of just thrown into these moments the whole time. And while you're singing, you're looking at the bar and you're like, has my customer's cocktail come out? And it's like, yeah, your focus is very split, which helps you get very comfortable and confident very quickly.
It's like you're always on the go, like you mentioned in the back of your mind. You're like, I have to do a good job at both, but I'm sure you excelled at it. And I guess there's nothing like being kind of thrown into that deep end as a Stardust Theatrical Dining performer. I can see you're just like remembering the times, like they're coming back to you.
But it's been, I made so many close friends that I'm still so close with now. In those, I think I was there for about 3 years, which is a long time. So I started in my last year of studies and then it kind of carried me over. And only like, I think a few months before One Piece started shooting did I quit that job because I was like, okay, I think it's time to close that chapter and focus on the next part. But yeah, it feels like a fever dream sometimes to think back on
It's
it.
great that you got to take some close friendships from that your time there though. And you just mentioned One Piece, so we'll kind of get into the show now. What can you share about your audition and casting process for the show?
So I auditioned not knowing what the show is. It was just a brief that was sent out. And they used a fake name. What was it? I think it was just Project Panda at that stage, but no one knew what exactly the show was. It's just told it's a international, it's coming to shoot here. Here's the character brief. Um, and I've heard since that they had a round of auditions, like in Cape Town and I think Joburg. Um, a first round that I wasn't asked to audition for, and then they did a second round in which I auditioned. And then it happened, I auditioned, I sent in self tapes, and then a few months later, they asked for options of me, which means they're like, are you going to be available from this time to this time? And we want you to make sure that you are available and we have option on you. And I was like, yes. And then it just became a confirmed thing very quickly out of nowhere. So it took me by surprise a lot. But it was so exciting to also just get that news. Yeah. I will always remember that day as one of the best days I think of my life.
Do you remember in your audition process, like what kind of scene you had to perform or what kind of narrative?
There were two scenes, and the one scene was between well, it wasn't Usopp wasn't the name that was used, it was a fake name. So it was between Kaya, who also I think was called Isabel as the fake name for the auditions. And it was between the two of them where he tells her that Klahadore, again a fake name of some sorts, has been lying to her and been poisoning her. So it was that scene where he comes in through the window and then says that he's not leaving. And the other scene was between Kaya and Nami when they're having a little bonding session. But it was written slightly differently. So yeah, but it was those scenes essentially.
So they just wanted to kind of give you tidbits, but like not the entire scene, I guess, to see how you would work with that, which is kind of sneaky good by them for for the
Very
part.
sneaky. But with reason. I completely understand why too. Yeah.
Well, you did get the part. So, as you mentioned, a really amazing day, amazing time for you. So, when you found out you booked the role, what kind of preparation did you do? And did it involve the source material or any discussions with the creative team?
Yes, yes. First and foremost, I went straight to the manga, obviously. So try to read it, but I struggled to find the material, but I found like tidbits here and there. But then I watched the anime, obviously, like quite a few times. Just because if there's an existing character, especially with the fan base that this type of show has, you want to stay true to where it's coming from and not, take too many liberties because it is a character that has been existing for so many years before, I had the privilege of taking her on, that you want to do her justice as much as you can. Um, and I mean, the manga is just so beautiful and so incredible, and these characters and their relationships are so sweet and endearing that you kind of get wrapped up in the world that's been created by the manga already. That it just honestly sparked so much excitement and being able to bring that to life in, our world. In our world, but not our world.
Yeah, in our world and in quotation marks, in the live action version, which I love
Exactly.
that you put a lot of kind of love and care into this part because it's really important for the fans, and I know it was important that this was a faithful adaptation. In your
Yeah.
words, how would you describe Kaya as a person? Like, what are her main values and personality traits?
I think first and foremost, she's incredibly kind-hearted, and I think she really does have the best of intentions and has a lot of capacity to care. I think that she has a lot of selflessness that especially people won't have at such a young age. So I think that's like something that's very core to her. Um, and I've also always viewed her as an incredibly strong character, even though she can also display vulnerability. I think her strength lies in her vulnerability and her way of being able to play both of those things and not try to hide her vulnerability, but standing within it.
I think that's such a nice assessment for her. And, she's very trusting, but like you mentioned, there's like an unassuming kind of power and strength in her that we see come out in the second episode that you are in. I know you also like to make playlists for your characters, which is very cool. Can you share any music that you added to Kaya's playlist?
I definitely can. I obviously keep all my playlists, and I remember when I had to do a what do you call it, ADR, so you do like a voiceover like a year after in post. I whipped out the playlist again that day to like listen to her world again, and it's such a strange thing to revisit. And then today I found myself listening to a playlist again, which is really lovely. But yeah, I think with hers, there's always a bit of a mix in terms of what types of songs are in there. But one of the songs is called Dot by Chili Gonzalez. More instrumental, and yeah, like I think it's more what I think her inner world sounds like. Um, and then there's another song that's called Lullaby in Ragtime by, oh, what's his surname? I think it's, wait 1 second. I don't want to lie to you. Harry Nilsson, that's his name. But that song specifically, I attached to a memory that I created with her parents in her world. So it was often a song that I would listen to just before we were shooting the scenes where she would speak about her parents. So it's like I created, yeah, attached it kind of to a song in a way to like very quickly remind myself of the feeling of that nostalgia and that loss. Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, like what kind of genre is the song?
Lullaby and Ragtime is like a very old type of song. Oh, what genre are I? Hold on. It almost has like a jazzy feel to it, but like something that I imagined her parents would like dance to and it would be playing on vinyl, but it's very slow and very sweet and like yeah, it kind of stands in the name of like a lullaby. It's something you want to listen to and kind of just start drifting off to.
And it's so great to kind of connect that to a memory that you created because like they say, like music really reminds us and takes us back to another point in time. I'm curious, what did you focus on in Kaya's mannerisms and physicality, taking into account that illness that we know her to have?
Yeah, totally. It definitely started with the illness, I think, and I kind of wanted to have that feeling of, you know, when you just start getting the flu and everything moves slightly slower, and it's like where usually if, you know, there's something sitting there and I'm like, oh, what's that? Like how quickly you would move to that. I think everything is more meticulous in terms of do I actually have the strength to pick that up right now? So it's the movements, I think almost felt like they were moving through water instead of just floating in air. And that it's always took a little bit more effort. So everything that she does always felt very motivated because it took so much energy to, you know, do an action. Yeah, so I think it always started in that, and then kind of just to have that feeling in your body and in your mind. You kind of just let the other things flow as they come to still be able to play on the floor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And I know a lot of people were saying, when Kaya's first introduced, they were saying, oh, like they thought that the actress who played her was ill just because of like the mannerisms and how like she was kind of hunched over, grabbing onto Klahadore. So you did a really good job with that and like through the thought process. Something that I know you got to wear was a wig. So can you tell me about your time with the hair, makeup, wardrobe departments, any details into the wig you wore or her fashion choices?
Yeah, it was incredible being able to transform so much from like my very long brown hair and tan skin into a character that looks so starkly different to me on my normal day was so cool, honestly. Um, it blew my mind when I went for a makeup test to see how they actually wrapped all my hair in and get the wig on, and also with lightening my skin. I mean, I was sure to, for the few months before we started shooting, avoid the sun and try my best to be as pale as I can. But they also, with makeup, helped that sick look so much. Um, but no, they were absolutely insane. The team that I worked with, Amanda was the head of everything, but Annie and Taryn would do my makeup on like the day-to-days. And they were such lovely people. So we really had the most wonderful time in the chair every morning. Um, and I mean, the costumes too. I also walked into all these fittings and you just see all these pictures of all the like original characters. So it was really amazing to step into that world and to know all the details and all the, you know, focus that's gone into wanting to stay as true to the show as possible. Yeah, it was really cool.
Did you know like did the costume department have any kind of mood boards or inspiration that they wanted Kaya to have for like her wardrobe choices?
Yeah, I mean they had pictures of the original characters, you know, the manga, and that was the main thing that I wanted to like stick with. So like the classic blue dress, with that coat, like yeah, it was really, really great. And then I think aside from that, they really did have tons of pictures up when I went for my fittings and put so much effort into little details. Even when I was wearing it, it was like, okay, slightly more here and slightly this and this must be tweaked. Um, but I think they worked so beautifully with the show's color palette in general and how, you know, every episode and every space that these characters existed in just came together so seamlessly that you could really feel that it was a whole team working together and not just one person being like, here's something I made, but rather that it was this big collective, which is really special to feel and also become a part of.
What I loved about Kaya's outfits is I feel like they were very like elegant, but also simple, which is kind of like her as a person. Like she has all this wealth, but it's not like she kind of feeds into that kind of that world.
Completely. I love that you said that because I think even with all her wealth, she's an incredibly humble person. I think, yeah, I think everyone managed to relay that and showcase that in all the other aspects of the show too, which is really, really cool.
Now, what did you consider Kaya's relationship with her parents was like when they were alive?
I imagine that it was really supportive and very happy relationships for the most part. I think also just with who Kaya is in her essence, um, and I think she's quite curious too. That I think she learned a lot from her parents and wanted to absorb a lot of knowledge and wisdom that they had, which I think also lends itself to why she is so mature at a relatively young age. Um, but I think I think she's someone who has quite a lot of how do I say this in English? She's quite introverted, I think, by nature, um, but still has that curiosity and that need for adventure and exploration. So I kind of imagined a lot, which we also see in the anime, that she would spend a lot of time following her parents around. And in the garden, I think she really loves nature and being outside, which makes it so heartbreaking that she couldn't do a lot of that in, the more recent years. Um, but I do imagine her parents also instilled really good values in her that lends itself to why she is so humble in who she's grown up to be.
She's definitely grown up to be like a giving person, and we hear that her parents were like that when they took Usopp and they took kind of Klahadore
Exactly.
in when they didn't have anyone. So it's definitely transferred to their daughter. And I think like in the manga series, like she's described as being a daddy's little girl as well. So there's that connection, like being close with her dad, with her parents, and wanting to learn. How do you think, like in your mind, their sudden death affected her? And coupled with that early onset illness, really caused her to rely on and trust Klahadore and Mary as companions and caretakers.
Yes, I mean, firstly, I think losing her parents was one of those moments where the whole world just goes still and it's like a second feels like it's an hour, but at the same time it feels like it's a split second and there's like the concept of time completely disappears. That I imagine the shock affected her so much that her becoming ill, she didn't even question it too much at the time. I think it was just her whole world was shaken so much that she kind of just fell into what happened in the first while. But then with Mary and with Klahadore being so present, especially Klahadore, and starting to take care of her, I mean, she was in no position to be able to take care of herself. So then when you are in such a vulnerable space and, with the who she is as a person and her willingness to accept people and see the best in them, I think she was really open to taking on that support, having lost the support that she had just had. Yeah, I think it one of those things, just you just go day by day and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, how did I end up here?
That's such a good way to say it. And like you mentioned, she's in a very, very vulnerable state. Like, well, she is maybe more mature for her age. She's really unprepared at that time. And it said in the show that Kaya, like, she couldn't even go through their belongings. She just kind of stored them away in her parents' bedroom because she just can't kind of face that realization or want to at this point. What do you imagine like her life and her living situation has been like the past few years kind of under Claudore's care?
I imagine that I think that she took on a slight routine for herself. in terms of just what she would do in her room, of like when it's tea time, it's time to read. And then in the afternoon, I can do a 5 minute walk. And then after I do my walk, I sit in my room and I look outside at the flowers. And then tomorrow, when I go on my walk, I'm going to go to that flower. So I think it was little things of fabricating some sense of reality and routine to also just keep her a bit sane. And I think well, a part of what's so special about her and Usopp's relationship is those were the moments where I think she really felt alive again, and like not having to just go in this routine of like trying to do one thing at a time, and believing that one day everything's going to feel better, but having those like moments of reminding herself what's within her also through him, I think brought a lot to her staying sane in a very plain way.
Yeah, just establishing some sense of normalcy amidst like that sheltered life that she kind of has to live at this moment. And I'm curious, like, was there any discussion or did you ever ask or question as to why Kaya like did not seek out additional help or a second opinion on her illness? Like, did she truly believe she had something to do with like her parents' death and that affected her to a point where like this became the new normal for her?
I think it makes sense to me that she hasn't questioned it just because of how trusting she is as a person. Um, Especially because she's never had a reason to question Klahadore. And I mean, it takes a lot for her to eventually accept the betrayal. Um, that I think her trust in something that she knows and something that's been nurturing her and caring for her would be much greater than that in a stranger or a doctor being like, maybe this is what's wrong with you. That I think she didn't really need an answer from another person because she could trust what she was feeling, and at the same time she just had so much trust in the people that were surrounding her that there wasn't a need for her to not believe them.
Yeah, and when you believe like someone has your best interests at heart, like you mentioned, it's easy to kind of just accept that and not question what's going on. There's so many like great scenes. So which was your favorite scene to be a part of and why?
So hard to choose. I think it's also because with so many different scenes, it's like different reasons why they're exciting to shoot. So like some of them specifically for like acting reasons of like the journey that the character's going through. And but honestly, I think what was so cool about the show is getting to see how they made everything come together. So many of the scenes was also just so exciting to shoot because I felt like a little girl walking into a playground. I was like, whoa, what are they doing today? So for example, the scene where Kaya, Nami, and Usopp are running through the servant passageways, they built that set and they had this huge machine that they tried and tested, and it was like when they were actually shooting the part of that impact, the actors were not on the other side because of like it's insane and it was so loud and it moves so quick of this machine with these the blades, and it just like shoots through this wood. So they let us obviously see it and we were around while they were shooting those moments, but they laid it over us being in there with reactions of being like, now this is happening and then you react to it, and now this is happening you react to it. So I think like moments like that, or I mean, seeing the shipyard was also a day that was incredibly special, and I think the scene itself is also so beautiful that I think that one also hit different marks of like feeling really fulfilled in terms of like acting through her and the journey that she finds herself in. And then also just seeing the actual set was so great. So amazing.
We'll talk about a couple of specific scenes really important to your character. But first off, like, did you and Jacob Romero, who stars as Usopp, did you discuss your characters' close friendship, the connection that they shared, and how would you describe the relationship and the dynamics that Kaya and Usopp have in the show?
We did discuss it before we started shooting this block. But I think we both just agree that there's this playfulness between the two of them, and definitely this like inherent chemistry that even though there is a more romantic something that exists between the two of them, they also just have this beautiful friendship and this genuine care for the other person. That's the most important. And beyond that, we also just wanted to keep that youthful playfulness between the two of them. And I think that was just the dynamic and the starting point, which we always started with, and then just left room to play around with it, which yeah, was really, really great.
Yeah, those moments when, he kind of comes in her room and shares his stories, and she just like looks past the fact that they're probably not the truth or fully the truth and just entertains it. Like, I love the way that you two kind of play off each other in those scenes.
No, it was, and he is so sweet and amazing. So the charisma that Usopp has, Jacob also has. So it's just seeing him portray that character was so much fun. And he's so consistent and gives so much on screen and off screen that, yeah, it really was just such a joy to work with him.
The sets for Kaya's mansion were brilliant. Take me through the sets you filmed in, the set decoration that you remember, notably in the dining room, the dining hall, and Kaya's room as well.
Sure. So those were definitely one of those little girl moments of walking into those rooms and being like, whoa. When I saw that dining room for the first time, I was stunned at looking at the walls of all the plates and like the setup that they made of all that food. Like it was so many tiny details that I think I would have been able to spend a whole day just looking and stuff. And Kaya's room the same. Something that's actually quite interesting is my brother works in like production design and props, and he was part of the props team that worked on Kaya's bedroom, which was quite a special little thing that happened very by accidentally. But the details of Kaya's room was really lovely because I saw it before we started shooting our episodes, and there are so many details that I could take into, for example, how I imagined her routine every day that you don't necessarily see, but it's nice nuances for you to have with your character. And there were things like there was a guitar, and all of a sudden I was like, I need guitar music, like classical guitar music on my playlist. Why don't I have this? So it was really nice to let the set inform the character that you're already busy developing. And I think one of my favorite details in her room was that they put all these little glass jars with like color liquid, so like a bright blue and a bright pink, and which essentially had become the paints that she used. And they also had this area with all these flowers. So how she was using flowers to color, this liquid to use it to paint her watercolor paints. And then the pictures that they had drawn, that she was drawing and painting, like seeing those things just made the world feel so real and so wonderful and magical. Yeah.
It's so rich for you as an actor to kind of be able to piece all of this together through these elements. And I noticed like in her room, there's so many like different lighting fixtures and wallpapers, which was just something additional to add that color and textures.
Yeah. No, it really, oh, I honestly never wanted to leave her. When I walked in there, I was like, can I just stay here for the next 3
Can I
months?
just say, can you like take things and bring them back to your own place to add that color? And she had a couple of plush animals on her bed as well. So there's like adding in like the fact that she's still young.
Yes, and holding on to that youthfulness and the like connection that I think a lot of those things held with her parents, of that not being ready to let go, but also not being ready to face it. Yeah.
Something sad is she did like paint Mary, and there's like a picture of Mary on an easel, which kind of was like a bit of a unfortunate foreshadow as well.
I know, it also made me so sad. But the painting was beautiful. I was
You're
like,
like,
Kaya
who
can
did
paint.
this? It wasn't me.
It really wasn't Celeste, but Kaya threw that hand, didn't do anything.
I love the dinner scene where Luffy pitches his pirate dream to Kaya. He's walking all over the table. What do you think she was feeling and thinking in that moment? Because she looked like she would have bought in then and there had Klahadore not intervened.
In my mind, she did buy in that moment. I think, I mean, Luffy and Inaki playing Luffy, there's something so magical and like entrancing about watching him. And Luffy just has this honesty about him and this genuine like passion that I think that she 100% in that moment was just like, I mean, firstly, she's been very isolated. So not really interacting with lots of people on the daily. Having all these people in a house is like very exciting. But then having someone with so much charisma and passion and, drive and determination, I think was so inspiring to her. And also with her willingness to share with people and, wanting to help by nature. I think it just seeing that in him, she completely could see the truth in that and, see his dream. And I think that's something that the whole One Piece world values so much is being able to see a person's dream and being able to help that dream is like the best way that you can be there for someone. Um, yeah, that I think she just really saw the honesty in him, which is really special, beautiful.
And like you mentioned, Inaki, I mean, so wholesome. Like he was the perfect Luffy for this role.
So wholesome, the sweetest person I think I've ever met. And so genuine in all his kindness. You're like, how is one person this consistently kind and open to the world and just energetic and upbeat? He's something incredible.
Another meaningful scene for you, like you mentioned, audition, was the one between Kaya and Nami. Tell me about the importance of that scene for Kaya and what did she see in Nami with her pillowcase in tow?
I think, I think Kaya also has a bit of a sense of humor. So I think it was also just being like, I'm not that stupid, but also I don't really care if it's really fine. Um, but I think that she saw something in Nami and a strength in Nami that she really admired. Um, and I think also just that Nami wasn't someone who puts up a front. Like I think Kai really appreciated that Nami was just who she is and not trying to pretend to be something to fit in a different space, which just made her more herself. Um, I think in those ways, she had a lot of respect for Nami, and I think there was a big curiosity in her for someone who's not really been exposed to female friendship, especially in the past few years. Since her parents and there's a lot of male characters that's been around her, it was this like curiosity and it's like need to be able to connect with someone different to that.
For sure. And, she felt comfortable opening up to her as well about the pity that she faces on an everyday basis and that fragility. And how was it to share that dialogue and safe space with Emily? Because like you mentioned, in this show though, in season one, we don't see a lot of female interactions and friendships.
It was honestly so incredible. Emily as a person is also so easygoing and really, really kind and funny. But at the same time, her professionalism is just as wonderful. So she's got this great balance. And what it offers you as, a co-actor is that you really feel very safe in being able to play those scenes. So, when you're doing a scene together that you're both in it together. And I think for Nami and Kai specifically, and having that female friendship moment, it's really special. Also because what Emma, the director, also said before we approached the scene was that we don't want it to just play into like it's a girly girl sleepover moment, but that there was a genuine connection on it. And I think it also for the greater part of the story could show Kaya's vulnerability, but yet her strength in it, but also show Nami's vulnerability and the big God that she has in front of it, which I think also created a very interesting dynamic between the two characters.
It was definitely a scene like kind of breaking down those walls, like you mentioned, and I think it came together really well. Kaya, she initially denies like, Klahadore's involvement in any wrongdoing. She's upset at Usopp, she slaps him. Take me through her emotions when Usopp and Nami tell her about Mary's death and the poison and the stark realization where she believes in that moment that she let her parents down.
I think it's a similar standstill moment that happens, where it's just, I think what makes it so heartbreaking in her case is that she kind of lost her foundation when she lost her parents. And then the past few years has taken all this trust and placed it in all these people to rebuild some sort of foundation. And then in this moment, it just like, with Usopp saying it the first time, it's almost like there's a little crack that starts forming, but it's like, no, 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 no. You're not gonna take this away from me. And then when Nami comes in, it's just that crack just all of a sudden starts like speeding through this whole foundation, and it just crumbles. Where it's in the crumbling, it's all these different thoughts that kind of comes into your mind, and it's something I think with dealing with loss and grief, there's always a big part of you that still carries those people with you. And in carrying that person with you, you still want to make them proud, even though they probably would be completely. But that need is still within you. And it's like you want to do justice to the person that you want them to think you are. So I think that just all starts crumbling into her mind slowly but surely, because it's just all these different thoughts that's so overwhelming, but still having to just jump into action and trying not to deal with it, but still it still comes back because you can't not deal with it. So yeah, a big moment, I'd say.
It's definitely very, very scary for her. Like you mentioned, kind of just all kind of comes at once, and this trust that she has had over the past few years has kind of disappeared. Alexander was so terrifying as Klahadore. When he shows his true colors, he starts attacking Kaya, like he starts attacking them physically, but also her character and who she is at her core. How was that whole sequence to film? I know you referenced like that little corridor earlier, but the reign of terror, like in her parents' room, the blades coming out, what was all of that like to film?
Alexander blew my mind. Like what he did with that character was so beautiful, and he created so many layers that gave like motivation for Klahadore and Kuro at this stage, and also why he's been doing this and taking advantage of the situation, and if it came from like his history's insecurities and just of his dream of wanting to be free essentially. So being able to work with him and see him bring that moment to life was beautiful and magical. And beyond that, he's an actor who gives so much that obviously Kaya isn't actually watching him say any of these things, but even hearing his voice, it was so eerie and felt so real that it was just this energy created in that room that was so wonderful to play in and to live in for those moments. But yeah, I think it really like sent shivers down my spine a good few times.
Tell me about the part where how did you film when Kaya was under the table and then those sharp blades kind of come down right in front of you? I'm guessing there's a lot of safety precautions on set for that.
It was. It was. There was a very specific mark in the desk, so above my head, where so when it was happening for the longer takes, there was already holes in, so Alexander would just like place it through the holes that exist. And in the one where it's like piercing through, there's like a little cardboard area, not cardboard, that's not the right, but like a plywood, I know, and I'm not using the right terms, please. People use it. But it was like wood that's not as solid as the rest of the desk. And there was a very specific mark they used, and then they used specific blades. It's like super, super strong. So it was very much a special and very much knew it was going to be in that area, and I sit over here, and that way everything is good and everyone is safe. But yeah, it was so cool.
I mean, even though you're expecting it, like it's still probably very jarring to have those come down.
So jarring, so jarring. So it really gave me a fright every time. You think it's going to give you less of a fright eventually. It doesn't.
Never fully comfortable on set during those times, but again, like you mentioned, he was so good in this role, and like having that fear exist on set. The farewell scene between Usopp and Kaya was such a tender moment. Take me through that scene and Kaya's move to kiss Usopp after all this time, and her insisting that she'd be okay on her own when he was hesitant to leave her.
I absolutely love that scene. I think I I firstly always saw it as like hearing him start saying, no, I can't do that, I can't do Kaya, I can't do that. I think because they have such a beautiful friendship that's so selfless in where the love comes from for the other. It's a genuine wanting the best for the other person. So I think Kaya knew that if she said stay, he would probably stay. And I think she knew that she would have to tell him to leave to actually get him to leave, and that he would probably be too nervous to do it on his own. So I think she also, after going through all of that, the strength in her, I think, also shows in that moment of not wanting to just start relying on another person at this stage in her life, but wanting to, stand on her own 2 feet, wanting to get better, wanting to figure out what she wants to do as a person. And I think, again, that's what's so beautiful about the show in general, is that there's this focus on dreams. And if you care for someone, you want them to achieve their dream. And I just think that's the most beautiful, selfless message that could exist. And I think it comes out so wonderfully in the moment between Kai and Usopp before he goes, where you can see there's a part of them that doesn't want to not be around the other, but for the greater part, they know they have to go live their own lives, and then maybe they can find each other again.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful story, and the one that you want to see when you kind of can grow apart before you can kind of come back together. So that's only the hope for them. But before we get into maybe the future, what was your favorite scene as a viewer and why in season 1? So a scene that Kaya was not in.
I'm awful at making decisions. So having to decide one feels like it's impossible. So I'm just gonna name like 3. And then I'm cheating a little bit with this question. I think there's so many moments that repeatedly are so sweet. Every single time Luffy says no one messes with my friends, I was like, oh, this is so good. Something's gonna happen. But beyond that, the fight sequences and the stunts were so cool that it almost felt like it was building all up to like the episode where they walk into Arlong Park. And I just remember when I watched it the first time, and there was just this like excitement that was like bubbling in your blood. What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? I'm just like, yeah, it was just very, very cool. But then also, because I'm a very nostalgic person, the scene between Sanji and Zep when he's on the ship and says bye to him breaks my heart. And it's like, it's one of those scenes where I feel like I can't blink, but at the same time there's tears welling up, so I kind of need to blink. Otherwise, everything's so blurry, so I don't even know what to do eventually. But it's so beautiful, and the way Taz played that goodbye also is just stunning, absolutely stunning.
Yeah, when he calls
Okay,
him like old
I'll stop
man.
now before.
old man from the deck, and it's just because when you first meet them, you don't see that relationship until it's uncovered and what they went through when he was younger. And yeah, it was such a like, there's so many beautiful kind of relationships when you think about the what family means in this show and how it really kind of subsedes that traditional definition. Now, you work with, you mentioned director Emma Sullivan in your episodes 3 and 4. What was it like working with Emma at the helm and under her direction and guidance?
What I really loved about Emma is that she always left a lot of room for us to explore and play and, figure out what felt right for our characters. But it always felt very guided, like with a very safe hand that's helping you through it. So I think she struck a really nice balance of offering direction and at the same time allowing us to also just exist in that world and see what happens organically. Yeah, which is a really amazing balance to find in a director, and it's really, really nice.
Yeah, it's so nice to have a director who you can really like, offers that direction, but you can learn a lot from as well when working with them. Separate of what is happening in the writer's room, if you should return in season 2 or even in future seasons, because we know there's a lot of material to go off of, what might you like to see or explore with Kaya?
I mean, first and foremost, a healthy Kaya would be real nice for a change. Um, I think in like a very real sense, just watching the character growth that becomes more and more into herself and taking those seeds of who she is as a person and then seeing what she manages to achieve and become while still staying true to who she is. Obviously would love to see her and Usopp seeing each other again, and being able to explore that support from each other. But then in like a alternate universe of the One Piece universe already, I would be so curious to see what happens if Kaya and Kuro ever meet again. I would be so curious. I don't know what would happen. I think I have ideas, but even my ideas goes like she would hate him. And then I'm like, what if she forgives him immediately? What if they become friends? And you're like, whoa, whoa, you don't actually know. And that's what makes this whole world so cool is that so many different things could come up and could happen and cross paths. And yeah, it's just very exciting.
And we know that like these villains, they're not necessarily gone forever. Like, they've just kind of been banished for the time being. Obviously she mentioned, oh, maybe I'll become a doctor. So it would be really nice to see her fulfill that dream and maybe give back to Syrup Village, maybe in her own way, separate from what her parents were doing with the shipyard.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And to help Usopp, maybe he gets injured and you can help him.
Definitely go. I think she'd have a difficult time tracking him down, but there's definitely that dream.
That would really be a problem.
Yeah.
Well, he would magically have to wash up on the shore of syrup.
I know, otherwise she would definitely have no luck of tracking him down. But what other specific storylines are you looking forward to seeing play out on screen, including the existing ones or the introduction of new characters?
I mean, the introduction of Dr. Kureya and what the internet has been saying about Jamie Lee Curtis playing it is like first and foremost very exciting to me. Like I would be so excited to see that. But I mean, furthermore, with the existing characters, the moment with Buggy and Alvida, whatever's gonna happen there, I'm in. I want to see it. And then honestly, I'm just so excited to see more of the fighting sequences and the stunts it's gonna come out because it's so epic every time that I want more of it. I want to see more.
You're definitely with the fans on that one. And speaking of the fans, tell me about the fan support you've seen and received, whether that's fan art, fan edits, reviews, and what has that support meant to you?
It has meant the world. it really has been so special to hear what the show has meant to people. Um, honestly, it makes me so happy and brings a smile to my face every single time I see a message. And I'm not the best at social media and always replying to everything, though I try my best, but so much of it hasn't gone unread and unseen. Like, it's really so wonderful to hear what it's meant to people and to hear that it's had this effect on people. And I mean, it made me laugh because I saw a comment at some point on my Instagram where someone commented something of like Miss Kaya, and another person responded being like, I'm sure she doesn't always just want to be named Miss Kaya. And I had a bit of a moment where I thought about it because I was like, how do I feel? And I was like, actually, every single time someone comments Kaya or Miss Kaya, it brings me so much joy because like I feel so honored and happy to have portrayed that character that if someone sees me as that character, I am so happy about it. It's like it's such a beautiful, special character that I'm already gonna carry with me forever. That it just brings me so much content to think that someone sees it in that way too and places so much value in the character. Because I feel like I value her just as much. So
I love that when you feel like it's such a privilege to have played her, that like it's really not a negative thing for you to be associated with the character. Well, that's great, and you know, I hope to see you in the future in the show. I thought you brought such a like warmth and relatability to Kaya. To move on to another current project of yours, you star as Zahn in Showmax's crime mystery Trompoppie. Tell me about the series and your character.
it's polar opposites to Kaya. She's like she's rich, actually. They have that in common. But she's a popular, like, it girl of a high school. That's like a very private high school with like elite families, children who go there. Um, and the show, it goes. Sorry, that was a Afrikaans anglicism that I just did. But it's about a group of girls who are Trompoppies, which is drum majorettes in English. And basically, my character at the end of the first episode goes missing when there's a tradition that happens. And the rest of the show becomes a whodunit murder mystery, and it follows the other drum majorettes, but also brings in different characters of trying to figure out what happened to my character. In a nutshell, that is it.
It sounds very intriguing. You mentioned like the Afrikaans. The series is in Afrikaans. Are you fluent in both English, Afrikaans? Can you act and speak fluently in both? Does one come more naturally than the other for you?
So yes, I'm fluent in both. I Afrikaans is technically my home language, so I grew up Afrikaans, but always spoke English. Um, all the schools that I was in, it was in primary school, for example, I had English classmates, sitting next to me, so the teacher would teach in both languages. So I grew up very bilingual, which definitely helped. And then when I got to grade 8, I don't know what to call that in other terms, but when I was about 14, I went to an English class. So then the rest of my studies was in English, which has helped me a lot in my comfortability in speaking English because I, was learning in English for majority of, my academic career. But Afrikaans still has that like comfortability that you get with like when you're a little kid. So it's like when I get really angry, I start thinking in Afrikaans, even though in my day to day, all my friends are English at this stage. But then when something happens, it's immediately just switches to that.
I do think it's great that you have both in your like back pocket though, because it definitely can like open more doors and opportunities for you, especially in film and like what we saw for One Piece.
Yeah.
Now, what was your experience like working with the show's creator, writer, director, Etienne Forey?
I mean, what that man achieved by single-handedly writing the series, which took months and months and has so many, because it's a murder mystery, everything needs to be placed very carefully of like little seeds of certain characters and, wanting to keep, suspects and like let it switch and, really take the viewer on a journey with all these characters and with the story. The way that he managed to write that story and then on top of that go on to direct it, I take my hat off to him. Like it is a huge thing to take on, and he managed to do it so incredibly. And what I always find so funny is because he's opened up to me since of being like saying that, there were moments where he was very stressed, but on set, he appeared to be so calm the whole time, where I was like, this man must have so much going on in his head, but he's just like, yeah, we're just gonna give you your notes and keep everything very composed, where on the inside, I think his mind was like running in little circles constantly. But it was so cool to be able to watch someone with that kind of a meticulous mind take on such a big project.
And definitely not letting any stresses show on set, which I think as a cast it was probably really appreciated. For those who haven't tuned in yet, why would you recommend the series and its story?
I think it's something that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's definitely got a very new tone to it that I find really fun and interesting and like a bit jarring because it like has this almost bitchiness of like a girls in a school, but then it's paired with this like upbeat feeling, but then with this like real complex characters. It's like sometimes really quirky and then sometimes very dark, that it has a lot of elements that's working at the same time that I think is incredibly interesting to watch.
And who doesn't love a good whodunit? I know that the season finale just aired last week, so I'm thinking it's still available to stream though on like Showmax or the streaming service.
Yeah, on Showmax.
Do you have any other upcoming projects that you can share?
I do. So it's also for Showmax, which is like a more South African local streaming site where what's really cool though is that they've taken on a lot of Afrikaans stuff. And what's really exciting about being able to be a part of these projects is that there's so much that's happening locally here too. And so much opportunity of like stories that I think is so universally relatable, but just coming from a different part of the world, which I actually love. So I have been working on a show since last year, August. We started shooting and we're still busy shooting. And it's called Wyfie, which directly translated means wifey. And it's looking at like 4 university girls and just, it's a very honest show about looking at, what happens when you're about 18, 19 and you just left the house. And it's dealing with friendships and dealing with really adult problems that come up when you don't really know how to deal with them yet, and just kind of exploring how these 4 girls navigate getting to know themselves and getting to know the world.
I was going to say, so Trompoppie just had the season finale, and I know Wyfie literally just premiered, so it's like back-to-back shows for you. Like, is it too early to call you the queen of Showmax?
I don't know. I mean, I am so happy that I get to be a part of these shows because it's also with our Afrikaans culture that exists here. It's been more on the conservative side for a very long time, and I feel like both of these shows paired with this other show that's absolutely incredible called Spinners, it's like a bit of a new voice that's emerging, which makes me so excited. I really am very excited about it.
And it's great to be a part of shows that have like female-led and female-empowered casts, because in both of these shows, it's like the main characters are female.
Yes, yes. Which again, it's you don't really get that very often. So it's such an honor to be a part of both of these shows. Like, I have to pinch myself sometimes.
And I love you share some behind the scenes on Instagram, like when you're working with the cast on your stories, and there's always cats around, like helping you out, helping study scripts. Do you have cats at home?
Yes, I have two cats, and one of my flatmates also have a cat, so there's three cats. But they're very quirky. The one has one eye. I got him like that. It was an accident that happened before we met. And my other one, who's also a rescue, has a little squiggly tail. So it's quite funny with my two little boys who look like they've been through a lot of battles. And then my flatmate has this beautiful princess cat with this long hair, and she's just an absolute rag doll.
There's
But I
nothing
do
like
I love
furry friends to kind of give you that extra motivation that you're like, okay, I need to get down and work, but
them.
also like I'm sure nice to cuddle with and at night.
So nice. Exactly.
I have one more question for you, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Salted caramel, because it's got a good balance of sweet and salty. So you never know which one you're gonna get, but there's always a little bit of both.
I love that. Thank you so much once again. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we get to catch up again in the
Yeah.
future. But until then, for all those watching, you can make sure to catch Celeste in One Piece. Season 1 is out now on Netflix. Catch her in
So what?
Trompoppie and Wyfie on Showmax as well for those in South Africa. And we will see you next time.
Bye.